At my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "You have 30 days to get out, old man. This is my house now." I just smiled, grabbed my coat, and quietly left the church. 2 weeks later, the FBI showed up at her door. This is how I made that happen. My name is Robert Chen, and I'm 68 years old. I spent 35 years as an accountant before I retired, the kind of guy who double-checks everything and keeps meticulous records. My wife Lily used to joke that I could spot a missing penny from a mile away. She passed away from ovarian cancer in the summer of 2022, and when she died, a part of me went with her. We'd been married for 42 years. The house felt too big without her, too quiet, too full of memories that made my chest ache. But I still had David. My son, my only child, was 35 years old and worked as a software engineer at a tech startup in Portland. He'd moved back from San Francisco after Lily got sick, wanting to be closer to us during her final months. After she passed, David checked on me almost every day. We'd have dinner together twice a week, and he'd help me with things around the house that I was getting too old to manage on my own. That mid-century modern home near Forest Park had been our dream house, the place where Lily and I raised David, where every corner held a memory. About 6 months after Lily died, David met Melissa Park on a dating app. He was lonely, I think, grieving in his own way, and Melissa was exactly the kind of woman who knew how to fill a void. She was 32, beautiful, and maintained a lifestyle blog and Instagram account with over 100,000 followers. Her feed was full of perfectly curated photos, aesthetic flat lays of coffee cups and flowers, inspirational quotes about living your best life. Everything looked so polished, so perfect. They moved fast. Way too fast, if you ask me. Within 3 months, they were engaged. David seemed happy, almost desperately so, like he was trying to outrun his grief by rushing into something new. I had my concerns, but what father doesn't when his son gets serious with someone? I tried to be supportive. There was one person who wasn't supportive at all. Sarah Kim had dated David for 3 years before they broke up amicably about a year before Lily got sick. She'd remained friendly with our family, even visited Lily in the hospice. When David told Sarah about Melissa, Sarah reached out to me privately. "Mr. Chen," she said, over coffee at our usual spot, "I don't want to overstep, but something feels off about this woman. David won't listen to me. He thinks I'm jealous. But I've looked at her social media. Everything is so calculated, so manufactured. And the way she talks about things, about lifestyle and aesthetic, it's like David is just another prop for her perfect life." I appreciated Sarah's concern, but I told myself she was being overprotective. Maybe there was a hint of jealousy there, even if she didn't want to admit it. I decided to give Melissa the benefit of the doubt. The wedding was in April 2023 at a vineyard in Willamette Valley. It was beautiful, expensive, all perfectly photographed for Melissa's Instagram. I footed most of the bill because David's startup salary could only stretch so far, and Melissa's influencer income was unpredictable. As a wedding gift, I signed over the deed to the house. It seemed like the right thing to do. David was my only child, and the house would be his eventually anyway. Lily and I had bought it for our family, and now David was starting his own family. It felt like passing on a legacy. At first, nothing seemed wrong. David and Melissa moved into the house, and I moved into the detached guest house in the backyard. It was actually kind of nice. A cozy one-bedroom with its own entrance and a small kitchenette. Lily had designed it years ago, thinking we might rent it out or use it for visitors. I had my space. They had theirs. We could be close, but independent. But slowly, things began to change. Melissa started redecorating almost immediately. The furniture that Lily had carefully chosen over decades was outdated and didn't photograph well. Piece by piece, my wife's taste was erased and replaced with minimalist Scandinavian furniture that Melissa got sponsored deals on. Every room became a backdrop for her content. She'd spend hours arranging and rearranging things for the perfect shot. Then came the boundaries. Melissa suggested, very sweetly, that I should avoid using the main house kitchen during the day because she needed undisturbed space for content creation. Could I please keep my visits to the main house to certain hours? She was establishing a routine for her work, you understand. David backed her up, said it was reasonable that we all needed our own space. The dinner invitations became less frequent. When I did join them, Melissa would be on her phone half the time, responding to comments and DMs. She barely made conversation with me, and when she did, it was superficial. She never asked about Lily, never asked about our history with the house, never seemed interested in the family she'd married into. I noticed David changing too. He seemed tired all the time, stressed. He'd lost weight. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd brush it off. Work was demanding, he said. The startup was in a critical phase. He was just a bit run down. Sarah texted me a few times during this period. "How's David doing?" she'd ask. "He hasn't been responding to my messages." When I told her he seemed tired and stressed, she went quiet for a moment, then wrote, "Please keep an eye on him, Mr. Chen. I have a bad feeling." I wish I'd listened to her more carefully. In November 2024, about a year and a half after the wedding, things took a darker turn. David started complaining about feeling foggy, having trouble concentrating at work. He had persistent stomach issues, nausea, fatigue that wouldn't go away no matter how much he slept. Melissa was very attentive, always bringing him special smoothies and home-cooked meals. She'd tell him he was working too hard, that he needed to take better care of himself. David went to the doctor multiple times. They ran tests, couldn't find anything specific. His doctor thought it might be stress, maybe burnout from his demanding job. They suggested he take some time off, maybe see a therapist. David tried to rest, but he kept getting worse. I'd visit him in the main house, find him on the couch looking gray and exhausted. Melissa would be there, playing the devoted wife, bringing him another smoothie or a special soup she'd made. "He needs his rest," she'd tell me, ushering me out after just a few minutes. Too much stimulation isn't good for him right now. Something about it bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. It was the way she looked at him sometimes when she thought no one was watching. Not with concern or love, but with a calculating expression I couldn't quite read. On December 15th, David collapsed at home. Melissa called 911, and he was rushed to the hospital. The doctors worked on him for hours, but his heart had failed. They told us it was sudden cardiac arrest, likely caused by an underlying condition they hadn't detected. He was only 35 years old. My son was dead, and I couldn't process it. The grief was different from losing Lily. Lily's death had been expected, tragic but not shocking. We'd had time to say goodbye, to prepare ourselves as much as anyone can prepare for losing someone they love. But David, healthy, young David, it made no sense. The funeral was 3 days later, on December 18th. It was a cold, gray morning. The church was full of David's friends, from work, from college, people I barely knew. Sarah was there, her eyes red from crying. She hugged me for a long time, whispered that she was so sorry, that she couldn't believe David was gone. Melissa stood beside me during the service, dressed in a perfectly appropriate black dress that probably looked great on her Instagram. But she wasn't crying. I kept glancing at her, waiting for tears, for some visible sign of grief. There was nothing. Her makeup was perfect, not a smudge. She accepted condolences with a gracious smile, and thanked people for coming with the same warmth you'd use at a cocktail party. After the service, there was a reception at the church hall. I was standing near the coffee urn, numb and exhausted, when Melissa appeared at my elbow. "Robert," she said quietly, her voice suddenly losing its performative sweetness. "We need to talk about living arrangements." I turned to look at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She glanced around to make sure no one was in earshot, then leaned in close. I could smell her expensive perfume. "You have 30 days to get out, old man," she whispered. "This is my house now. David left everything to me, and I need you gone. I'm selling the place, and I can't do that with you squatting in the guest house." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My son was dead less than a week. We just buried him an hour ago, and this woman was evicting me from the property I'd signed over to my son as a gift. I looked into her eyes and saw absolutely no remorse, no grief, no humanity, just cold calculation. I could have made a scene. Part of me wanted to. But something stopped me. Maybe it was my accountant's brain, the part that had learned over decades to keep emotions separate from strategy, to think 3 moves ahead. Or maybe it was just shock. I smiled at her. A calm, quiet smile. "Of course," I said. "I understand. I'll start packing right away." She looked momentarily surprised, like she'd expected an argument. Then she nodded, satisfied, and walked away to accept more condolences from David's grieving co-workers. I grabbed my coat, said quiet goodbyes to a few people, and left. Sarah caught up with me in the parking lot. "Mr. Chen, are you okay? You look." "Sarah," I said, and my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "I need your help with something. Can you come by the house tomorrow?" She searched my face, then nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need." I drove home in a daze, parked in front of the guest house, and sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at the main house. At what had been my house, my and Lily's dream, now occupied by a woman who just threatened me at my son's funeral. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind. David's sudden illness, his decline, the way Melissa had been so attentive, always bringing him food and drinks, the way she hadn't cried at the funeral, the cold efficiency with which she'd told me to leave. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Around 3 in the morning, I remembered something. David had kept a journal. He'd been doing it since college, writing down his thoughts, working through problems on paper. He used to keep it on his nightstand, but after he married Melissa, he'd mentioned once that he'd moved it because Melissa didn't like clutter in the bedroom. I got up, got dressed, and quietly let myself into the main house using the key I still had. The lights were off. Melissa was presumably asleep upstairs. I moved carefully through the dark house, trying to remember where David might have hidden something he wanted to keep private. The office. David's small home office where he sometimes worked remotely. I went in, closed the door, and used my phone flashlight to search. It took me 20 minutes, but I finally found it tucked behind some books on a high shelf. A plain leather journal, the same one he'd had for years. I took it back to the guest house and started reading. The entries from the early days of his relationship with Melissa were happy, hopeful, but as the months went on, the tone changed. David started noting things that bothered him. The way Melissa got angry if he went out to eat without telling her first. How she insisted on preparing all his meals at home. How she'd get upset if he questioned any of her decisions about money or the house. Then came the entries from the last few months, and my blood ran cold. October 12. Feeling really foggy today. Can't focus. Melissa says I'm working too hard. She made me a special smoothie to help with energy. October 28. Stomach has been bothering me for weeks. Melissa thinks I might have developed a food sensitivity. She's researching special diets. Wants to control what I eat more carefully. November 15. Found something weird today. Was looking for aspirin in Melissa's bathroom cabinet and found a receipt from a hardware store. Rat poison? Why would we need rat poison? We don't have rats. I asked her about it, and she got really defensive, said it was for the basement. But we don't have a rat problem. I know we don't. November 30. I'm scared. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but I found Melissa's laptop open yesterday, and there were tabs open about symptoms of poisoning, how to clear browser history, how long certain substances stay in the body. When I asked her about it, she said she was researching for a blog post about household safety, but her face, she looked angry that I'd seen, really angry. December 10. I feel like I'm dying. Every day, I'm weaker. The doctors can't find anything wrong, but I know something is wrong. I've been thinking about my food, about Melissa always being the one to prepare everything. I tried to suggest we order takeout last night, and she threw a fit, said I didn't appreciate her care. I'm starting to think, no, I can't think that. She's my wife. She loves me, but Sarah warned me. Dad seemed worried. Why didn't I listen? December 14. I think I'm going to die. I can barely sit up to write this. Melissa just brought me another smoothie. I poured it out when she left the room. I need to talk to Dad. I need to tell someone. But I'm so tired. So tired. That was the last entry. The next day, David collapsed. I sat there in the guest house, holding my son's journal, and I knew with absolute certainty that my daughter-in-law had murdered my son. The next morning, Sarah came over as promised. I showed her the journal, told her about Melissa's threat at the funeral. Sarah's face went pale as she read the entries. "Mr. Chen, you need to go to the police. Right now." "With what?" I said. "A journal? They'll say he was paranoid, that he was sick and looking for explanations. David's been cremated. There's no body to test. Melissa can say anything, claim he was having delusions from his illness. I need more." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I need to be very, very careful. And very, very smart." I spent that day researching. Late that night, I called the Portland Police Department and asked to speak with a detective about a potential homicide. They connected me with Detective Elena Torres, a woman in her 40s who agreed to meet with me the next morning. I brought her David's journal, told her everything. Detective Torres listened carefully, took notes, but I could see the skepticism in her eyes. "Mr. Chen," she said gently, "I understand you're grieving, and these journal entries are concerning. But without physical evidence, without a body to examine, this would be very difficult to prove. Your son's doctors diagnosed him with cardiac arrest, without an autopsy showing poisoning. He was cremated," I said, 3 days after he died. Melissa arranged it quickly, said it was what David would have wanted. But David and I had talked about this after Lily died. He wanted to be buried next to his mother. He specifically told me that. Torres's expression changed slightly. "That's interesting. But still, I need you to look into Melissa Park," I said. "Her background, her history. I think my son wasn't her first." Torres promised she would look into it, but I could tell she thought I was a grieving father grasping at straws. She took copies of David's journal entries and said she'd be in touch. I went home and did what I do best. I investigated, I organized, I documented everything. I started with Melissa's social media. I went back through years of her Instagram posts, looking for patterns. There were gaps, periods where she'd posted nothing for months, then suddenly reappeared in a new city with a new aesthetic. In 2019, she'd been posting from Seattle. The posts were full of a man's hands, carefully cropped shots of couple activities, but never showing his face. The captions referenced my love and my husband. Then suddenly, the posts stopped. 3 months later, she was posting from San Francisco, alone, with captions about new beginnings and finding yourself. I dug deeper. I searched for her name in combination with Seattle, found a wedding announcement from 2018. Melissa Park marries Brandon Lee. I searched for Brandon Lee's name and found his obituary. Died unexpectedly in 2019 at age 29. Survived by his wife, Melissa. Cause of death, heart failure. My hands were shaking as I kept searching. San Francisco. Another wedding announcement in 2020. Melissa Park marries Marcus Johnson. Another obituary. Marcus Johnson died in 2021 at age 34 of sudden illness. Survived by his wife, Melissa. 2 dead husbands before David. Both young, both dying of vague cardiac or illness-related causes. I compiled everything into a document. Timelines, screenshots, obituaries, marriage records. I found property records showing that Melissa had inherited substantial assets from both men. Brandon Lee's life insurance payout of $400,000. Marcus Johnson's house in San Francisco plus life insurance worth $500,000. David had a life insurance policy worth $300,000, plus the house, which was worth at least $800,000 in Portland's market. Melissa Park had made over $2 million by murdering 3 husbands. I sent everything to Detective Torres. This time, she called me back within hours. "Mr. Chen, this is significant. I'm going to need to bring in some additional resources. This crosses state lines, so we'll need FBI involvement. Can you come in again tomorrow?" The next day, I met with Detective Torres and 2 FBI agents. They'd already started their investigation, pulling records, contacting police departments in Seattle and San Francisco. The pattern was undeniable. "We need to proceed carefully," one of the agents said. Right now, we have circumstantial evidence. We need concrete proof that she committed these crimes. The bodies of the previous husbands will need to be exhumed and tested. That will take time, I said. In the meantime, she's living in my house, planning to sell it. What if she runs? We're monitoring her, Torres said. But Mr. Chen, I need to ask you something. Are you willing to help us? Anything. We need her to confess, or we need to catch her in the act of trying to dispose of evidence. You still have access to the house, correct? I haven't moved out yet. She gave me 30 days. Torres looked at the FBI agents, then back at me. How would you feel about wearing a wire? 3 days later, I was fitted with a recording device. The plan was simple. I would confront Melissa, imply that I knew what she'd done, and see how she reacted. They coached me on what to say, how to push without being too obvious. It was December 27th, 12 days after David died. I knocked on the door of the main house. My house. Melissa answered, looking annoyed. Robert, I thought we agreed. I know what you did, I said, pushing past her into the house. Her face went carefully neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. David's journal. I found it. He knew you were poisoning him. That's absurd. But her hand tightened on the doorframe. David was sick. He was paranoid, confused from his illness. Brandon Lee, I said, watching her face. Marcus Johnson. How many husbands have you killed, Melissa? She went very still. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then she laughed, a cold, brittle sound. You have no proof. No body, no toxicology, nothing. David was cremated. Even if he wrote paranoid delusions in some journal, so what? It's the ramblings of a sick man. The police are exhuming Brandon and Marcus right now, I lied. They're going to find the antifreeze you used. It mimics cardiac symptoms, doesn't it? Small doses over time. Hard to detect unless you're specifically looking for it. Her face changed. The mask slipped for just a second, and I saw rage underneath. You think you're so smart, old man. You signed this house over to David. David left everything to me. Even if you had proof, which you don't, you've already lost. This is my house now. My money. My life. And there's nothing you can do about it. Did David know? I asked quietly. At the end, did he know you were killing him? Melissa smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. He was too stupid to realize until it was too late. He started to suspect, maybe, in those last few days. He kept looking at me with these confused, betrayed puppy eyes. But he didn't stop drinking the smoothies, did he? He trusted me. They all trusted me. That's what makes it so easy. You killed him for insurance money? For a house? I killed him because I could, she said. Because men like David, like Brandon, like Marcus, they're so desperate for love, so eager to believe in the fantasy. They see what they want to see, and I give them that fantasy for a little while. Then I take everything and move on. It's almost boring how easy it is. And now you're evicting me from my own home. Your home? She laughed again. You gave it away, remember? Your sentimental gesture. Well, I'm going to sell it for $1 million and move somewhere warm. Maybe California again, or maybe Arizona. Somewhere I can start fresh, find husband number 4. There are so many lonely men in the world, Robert. So many fools waiting to be plucked. I felt sick. This woman had killed my son, was bragging about it, and felt absolutely no remorse. You won't get away with this. I already have, she said. Now get out of my house before I call the police and tell them you're threatening me. I left. Detective Torres and the FBI agents were listening to every word from a van parked down the street. They arrested Melissa Park an hour later. The case moved quickly once they had her confession on tape. The bodies of Brandon Lee and Marcus Johnson were exhumed. Toxicology tests found high levels of ethylene glycol, the main component in antifreeze. The medical examiners determined both men had been poisoned over extended periods. The slow accumulation of toxin, mimicking natural cardiac failure. Without David's body, they couldn't definitively prove she'd killed him the same way, but the pattern was clear. The confession was damning. Melissa was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. The media had a field day. Instagram influencer arrested for killing 3 husbands. Her social media accounts were flooded with comments, then taken down. Her sponsors dropped her immediately. The perfect life she'd curated online was revealed as a facade for something monstrous. The house became mine again. Legally, everything David had owned reverted to me as his next of kin, since Melissa was charged with his murder. It was a cold comfort. I didn't want the house. I wanted my son. 2 weeks after Melissa's arrest, I was cleaning out David's office when I found an envelope taped to the bottom of a drawer. My name was on it, in David's handwriting. Inside was a letter. Dad, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but I've started to suspect Melissa is trying to hurt me. I know how that sounds. I know you'll think I was losing my mind from being sick. But I found things, Dad. Receipts, browser histories, and the way she looks at me sometimes. I love her. Or I did love her. I don't know anymore. I'm confused and scared and I don't know who to trust. But I trust you. I've always trusted you. If something happens to me, please make sure she doesn't hurt anyone else. Please don't let her get away with this. I'm sorry I didn't listen when Sarah warned me. I'm sorry I rushed into this marriage. I think I was trying to fill the hole Mom left, and I made a terrible mistake. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry. David. I sat on the floor of his office and cried for the first time since he died. Really cried, the kind of grief that empties you out and leaves you hollow. My son had known. He'd tried to warn me. He'd tried to protect future victims. And he'd still died because he'd loved someone who saw him as nothing more than a mark. Sarah came over that evening. I showed her the letter. She cried too, and we sat together in the quiet guest house, sharing memories of David, trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. He was a good person, Sarah said. He deserved so much better. They all did, I said. Brandon, Marcus, David. They were just looking for love. The trial took place in the summer of 2025. I attended every day. Melissa showed no emotion throughout, her face a perfect mask. The prosecution laid out the pattern of her crimes, the coldly calculated way she'd selected victims, married them quickly, isolated them, slowly poisoned them, collected insurance money and assets, then moved on to the next city and the next victim. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. Melissa Park was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms, without the possibility of parole. As they led her out of the courtroom, she looked at me once. There was no remorse in her eyes, no humanity, just cold, flat indifference. She was a predator who'd been caught, nothing more. It's been a few months now since the trial ended. I still live in the house, though I've been thinking about selling it. There are too many memories here, both good and bad. Lily's warmth and David's childhood and Melissa's poison all mixed together in these walls. Sarah and I have stayed in touch. She's been a good friend through all of this. Someone who knew David and loved him and understands the complicated grief of losing someone to violence. We have dinner once a week, share stories about David, keep his memory alive in small ways. Last week, I planted a tree in the backyard, right near where David used to play when he was a kid. A Japanese maple, like the one Lily always wanted but never got around to planting. I put a small plaque at the base, in memory of David Chen, beloved son, gone too soon. I visit it every morning with my coffee and tell David about my day. It's not the same as having him here, but it's something. I've thought a lot about what I could have done differently. Should I have pushed back harder against the marriage? Should I have investigated Melissa sooner? Should I have noticed the signs earlier? The guilt sits heavy on my chest some days, this weight of all the what-ifs. But I also know that Melissa was a predator who'd perfected her technique over years. She fooled Brandon's family, Marcus's family, and initially, she fooled me too. She was good at what she did because she had no conscience, no empathy. Nothing human getting in the way of her calculations. What I learned from all of this is simple. Trust your instincts. When Sarah said something felt off, she was right. When I started noticing red flags, I should have acted sooner. We ignore our gut feelings because we want to believe the best of people, because confrontation is uncomfortable, because we don't want to seem paranoid or judgmental. But sometimes those instincts are right. Sometimes the person who seems too perfect is hiding something dark underneath. Sometimes the charming surface conceals a predator. And if someone you love seems to be changing, getting sicker, more isolated, more controlled, speak up. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't tell yourself you're overreacting. Better to be wrong and embarrassed than silent and right. David wrote in his journal that he should have listened to the warnings. I carry that lesson with me every day. His death wasn't in vain if it can save someone else. If even one person reads this story and recognizes the signs in their own life, or the life of someone they love, if they speak up and save a life, then maybe some good came from this tragedy. I visit David's grave every Sunday. It's next to Lily's, just like he wanted. I tell them both about my week, about Sarah, about the maple tree that's starting to leaf out in the backyard. I tell them I'm sorry I couldn't protect David. I tell them I love them, and I tell them that justice was served, that Melissa Park will never hurt anyone else, that David's final request was honored. It's not enough. It will never be enough, but it's something. My name is Robert Chen. I'm 68 years old. My daughter-in-law murdered my son at my son's funeral. She whispered that I had 30 days to leave my own house. 2 weeks later, the FBI arrested her for killing 3 husbands. If you're in a relationship with someone who isolates you, controls what you eat, gets angry when you don't follow their rules, if people who love you are expressing concerns and you keep dismissing them, please listen. Please get help. Please don't become another story like David's. Trust your instincts. Speak up. Protect the people you love. And don't ignore the warning signs, even when they come wrapped in a beautiful smile and a perfect Instagram feed. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening to an old man's story. I hope it helps someone out there. I really do.